What's up, guys? Welcome to your 26 Android tutorial for the new Boston, again with me, Travis. What we're going to be doing in this tutorial is basically getting our toggle button working. We're also going to introduce what the final, basically making a variable final and what that is in Java. So what we're going to do is we're going to have this toggle button and we're going to set up a on-click listener, because it's kind of a good review because we've done this in the past as well, and you guys will get familiar with this because it is kind of confusing the first time you see it. But again, we defined all of our variables up here and the reference to the XML. We created a toggle button called passTog, and it's having this yellow error because we aren't using it. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up the on-click listener by typing out the variable name, again within our onCreate bracket, so it'll be the within the second bracket right here. And so we're going to say passTog, and then we can set the on-click listener by hitting dot set on-click listener. And there's also an option of set check change listener, but I want to use the set on-click listener because later I'm going to introduce something else. So use the set on-click listener, and again we're just going to finish off the bracket right here before we define our on-click listener, just so we don't get confused within all these brackets and all this code that's going on. So again, we don't have an on-click listener, so we're going to say new view dot on-click listener. And you guys will again get familiar with this. It's kind of looking sketchy right now, but all you need to do is click right here and it will set it up for you. And if it didn't, retype it out. It should give you a little help, or a clip should give you a little help, and then you just click it and it'll set that up. Otherwise, you guys can kind of look at how this is set up at the moment. And here we go. Every time the the toggle button is pressed, we're going to want to do something within the onClick method. So we're going to go within this bracket, and what we're actually going to do is we're just going to change our edit text from kind of the password setup that we did. Basically right now we set up the edit text to have a password set to true, and that's going to kind of block out whatever we type in, give it those little stars or dots or whatever. So how we're going to do that is we're going to create an if and else statement. So within here we're going to say if, and then we're going to have a bracket. Basically we're going to define something. If this is true, we're going to do whatever is within this new bracket that we just created. Else, meaning that it's false, we're going to do whatever is within this bracket. So there we go. We have a lot of brackets. I'm going to try and keep those all on the screen so you guys can follow along if you get confused. But basically, if you start a new bracket, hit enter, it's going to finish it for you, and then you just do else, new bracket, hit enter again. There we go. We have our thing set up. But what we want to check is if the toggle button is set to true, or if it's turned on. And if it is, we're going to do something. If not, we're going to do something in this else statement. So how we're going to define that is by going referencing our, again, variable passTog, which is our toggle button. So passTog, and we can hit period and use a method called isChecked. And it's a Boolean, basically meaning true or false statement. Those are the only two options. So if it is checked, it's going to be true. If it's false, it's not true. So if it's not checked, then it's false. Now what we're getting is a error over our passTog because we're using it within like a sub bracket, or basically a sub bracket, you guys can think of it, and or sub method. And if we hover over it, gives us a recommendation to change the modifier to the type final. So we're going to click that, and what that does is it adds this modifier called final right before we define what our variable is. Now basically what final means is it's not going to change. Since this toggle button is always going to have this reference bridge over to the XML and not going to change from that reference bridge, we need to say that it's going to be final, because that's never going to change. It's always going to be that reference. So what we can do is say if is toggled. Basically that's the majority of the lesson I want to show you guys, is this if or else. But we're actually going to get into the coding of setting up the input type for the most part, if we want it to be a password type or a regular text, in the next tutorial. So get kind of familiar with this layout. Again, we set the onClick listener and we set up an if or else statement within our onClick method. And we also set this to final because that reference is never going to change, and that will allow us to access that variable within these sub methods as well. So thanks again for watching, guys, and I'll catch you in the next tutorial.